To what extent may man intervene in the course of nature? Where does the line blur between a useful crossbreed and the creation of a Frankenstein monster? Today, we're going to take a look at some unique hybrid experiments with you that are leaving us with our jaws on the floor. Especially the ninth point of our video will leave you absolutely stunned. Given the terrifying creatures already being bred in the scientists' labs, we'd prefer a cross between a thumbs up and a subscription from you. And be sure to leave us a comment below and let us know which of these strange hybrids you find the most interesting. The Monkey Man. Some time ago, a few pictures circulated through the internet, which left users with raised eyebrows. Is the figure shown a cross between a monkey and a human? Does the creature possibly embody the missing link in the evolution of our species? Or do the photos only show us the work of a very good makeup artist? Published in the Dutch magazine Het Leven in 1937, the ape man is said to have been found deep in the Brazilian jungle. After the modern renaissance of photos, the comment columns on Reddit, Facebook, and other social media websites quickly split into two camps: those who were convinced it was a fake, and those who actually believed in an anthropological miracle. One observant user pointed out that the ape man is remarkably well shaven and has a fairly neat haircut, despite the fact that he was allegedly only recently caught in the wild. Other viewers debunked the puffy lips and prominent nose as the work of a skilled makeup artist. But regardless of whether the images are authentic or not, we shouldn't forget one thing. In the past, voices have repeatedly been heard telling of inexplicable figures in the jungle. Such was the case in 1920, when the Swiss François Deloye led an expedition along the border between Colombia and Venezuela to find new oil wells. As the group set up camp near the Tara River, two 5-foot-tall ape-like creatures approached. When they started roaring loudly and waving their arms wildly, the men got scared, which is why they shot one of the two unknown animals. Deloye then steadied the creature with a stick under its chin, snapped a photograph, and skinned it to take its skin and skull to Europe. However, both had to be abandoned in the jungle when the team encountered significant difficulties on the way back. To the day. If you've thought up to now that the deliberate crossing of animals is a phenomenon of our modern times, you've made a big mistake. According to this, the ancient Sumerians already created special donkey hybrids as pack animals for their chariots. And that, mind you, was 4,500 years ago. This people, which is considered the first high culture in history and invented cuneiform writing, among other things, crossed male wild donkeys with female donkeys. The so-called kungas that emerged from this were valued above all for their robustness and speed. However, the offspring must have been extremely difficult. In fact, kungas were most likely infertile. It should therefore come as no surprise that a kunga in ancient Mesopotamia was about 6 times more expensive than a common donkey. When the first domestic horses came to the region around 2000 BC, the downfall of kunga breeding was sealed. After all, horses were much easier to breed. Mammoths. It is well known that mammoths have been extinct for around 4,000 years, but this fact could soon be a thing of the past. A few years ago, scientists managed to reconstruct 70% of the genome of a woolly mammoth. Since then, researchers have been trying to complete the DNA more and more. In order to obtain the missing parts of the genetic material, the researchers want to incorporate mammoth genes into modern elephants and breed mammoth. In order to obtain the missing parts of the genetic material, the researchers want to incorporate mammoth genes into modern elephants and breed mammoths using the so-called CRISPR method. However, this would by no means be just a thoughtless gimmick. According to this, the mammoths could help to expand or relocate the habitat of endangered pachyderms due to their higher resistance to cold. At home in virtually uninhabited, bone-chilling regions, the herds would slow the thawing of the permafrost and do their part in the fight against climate change. Human-cow hybrid. In 2008, a report hit the headlines that sparked a major ethical debate. British scientists had succeeded in creating embryos from human genome and cow eggs for the first time. In detail, the embryos consisted of 0.1% ruminants and 99.9% Homo sapiens. For this purpose, human skin cells were transplanted into egg cells hollowed out from cows and stimulated to grow with an electrical impulse. But what did the researchers hope to gain from the creation of these so-called chimeras? Did they actually want to create a hybrid of a human and a cow? Well, luckily it wasn't that crazy. The scientists actually wanted to find out whether chimeric stem cells could be used to treat diseases such as Parkinson's. Pyrenäen Steinbock. The Pyrenæen ibex is extinct for the second time. Originally, the subspecies of the Iberian ibex was at home in the Pyrenees of Andorra, France, and Spain before its population shrank massively in the 19th century as a result of extreme hunting. Unfortunately, the protective measures taken as a result were not to take effect. So, in the 80s, there were only 3 old females left, and attempts to mate these with males of other subspecies failed to produce new offspring. In 1999, a cell sample was taken from the last known specimen to create a clone. When the animal died in 2000, the subspecies was officially considered extinct. However, the scientists succeeded in actually breeding a clone 3 years later. But since it died again after a few minutes, the extinction of the Pyrenæen ibex was once again sealed. Thylacine. In the 19th century, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, received the unwelcome reputation of repeatedly hunting sheep, despite the fact that these animals were most likely incapable of killing sheep, and the livestock probably fell victim to feral domestic dogs. The population of the thylacine dwindled more and more drastically as a result of the massive hunting. Despite all the unconfirmed sightings, the carnivores have been considered extinct for many decades. However, researchers have been trying for some time to breed the animals back using genetic engineering. In 2017, a first breakthrough was recorded when a group of Australian scientists managed to decode the thylacine genome, probably completely. A team led by Harvard molecular biologist George M. Church is currently working on bringing the extinct species back to life. Great auk. Between 70 and 80 centimeters tall, the great auk was once considered the penguin of the northern hemisphere. Despite all the similarities and official designations, these flightless seabirds were not related to penguins. Native to the islands of the North Atlantic, the great auk has become increasingly rare over time, making it more sought after by collectors. As a result, ornithologists eager to add such a specimen to their collections may have played a part in bringing the great auk to extinction once and for all. However, experts now plan to use genetic information from fossils and preserved organs to incorporate great auk DNA into the closest living relative, the razorbill. White-blue Belgians. The breed of cattle of the white-blue Belgians falls somewhere between bodybuilding cows and I'll steal your lunch. But joking aside, the incomparable musculature of these animals is due to a gene mutation, which leads to a combination of unchecked muscle growth and a very low fat content. Originally an ancient native breed, farmers began purposefully crossing shorthorn cattle in the late 1800s. Since the 1950s, particular attention has been paid to breeding cows that are as muscular as possible. Two-headed dog. Russian scientist Vladimir Demikhov has a bizarre record. He attempted to transplant one dog's head onto another's body over 25 times. At the time, Life magazine sent a reporter to Russia to record all the details of this macabre Frankenstein story. Thus, in the 1959 article, we learn that Demikhov first set about the task of severing the head of the 9-year-old bitch, Shavka. Meanwhile, the scientist stated that the stray cat caught by dog catchers was actually very lucky. After all, 2 heads are better than 1. Soon after, another dog named Palma was brought into the operating room. Demikhov then proudly referred to the scars on the animal's chest and stated that he had recently implanted an additional heart. Then, the scientist turned his attention back to Shavka and the anesthetized dog Brodyaga. We'll spare you the unsavory details here. Ultimately, though, Dimikhov managed to transplant Shavka's head and front paws onto the other quadruped's body. Initially, both animals would survive the procedure. In fact, they were subsequently able to see and move independently of one another. The fact that the two-headed dog was dead 4 days later didn't deter Dimikhov. He repeated the procedure dozens more times. Cuban macaw. The Cuban macaw may look very similar to birds that still exist today, but it was a breed of its own. These birds are expected to have lived for thousands of years, but their lives were eventually endangered by the arrival of Native Americans and Europeans, who began to hunt them in the 15th century. Their numbers began to dwindle, and they were officially declared extinct in 1885. Several skins of Cuban macaws still survive today, because many of the final living specimens were captured and gifted to various European settlers. There are 19 skins known to exist, each of which is found in a museum. The final sightings of these birds were sometime around the 1850s, with the final living specimen being found in 1864. There are many different variations of macaw that have been discovered throughout the years, but due to a lack of photographic evidence, it is difficult to determine if these specimens were Cuban macaws or another breed entirely. Scientists are working diligently to cross this DNA with another macaw breed in the hopes of bringing back a form of Cuban macaw, but no progress has been seen yet. Labrador duck. The Labrador duck was a bird from North America who was last seen in the mid-1800s. The species was believed to have gone extinct after the Columbian Exchange during the 15th and 16th centuries, but a final sighting was noted in 1878. This duck was extremely rare to find during its lifetime, so as European settlers migrated to America and began to hunt the ducks, their numbers decreased to near extinction. It was expected that the breed would repopulate over time, but this never happened. Impressively, over 55 examples of the Labrador duck have been acquired by museums over the years, meaning that we have an excellent idea of what these ducks would have looked like during their natural life. And this also means we have plenty of specimens to extract DNA from to breed with other ducks when the technology becomes available. Caspian tiger. The Caspian tiger was a breed that lived in Turkey, Mesopotamia, and the Caucasus. Though they were commonly found near the Caspian Sea, these animals lived in forested areas of these countries until the 1970s, when they were assumed to have gone extinct. This belief was confirmed in 2003, with the entire Caspian tiger population being confirmed as deceased. These tigers were average-sized, but are mostly remembered for their large torsos, a characteristic that is rather uncommon in other breeds of the tiger. Most of these beautiful animals weighed between 300 and 500 pounds, so they are not a breed to be messed with in the wild. The population had been dwindling for many years before their ultimate extinction, with one of the final Iranian Caspian tigers being seen in 1887. The country of Georgia saw its final tiger in 1922, after it was killed and taken to be displayed in a museum. Nearly every other country lost sight of them in the 60s and 70s, but there has been a single report of a Caspian tiger sighting in 1998 near the Babatog Range in Afghanistan. Following this, no others were ever seen or reported, but the Caspian tiger is now believed to be nothing more than a memory. Unfortunately, it would be remarkably difficult to bring back such an animal, considering there are so few specimens available. But that doesn't stop some scientists from being hopeful that they could create a new type of hybrid tiger in the future using Caspian tiger DNA. Dodo. Will the dodo, which became extinct around 1690, soon return to the living world? One look at the sensational breakthrough recently made by a team at the University of California answers that question. Possibly yes. In detail, the researchers were able to decode the complete genetic material of the flightless species for the first time in history. However, there's still a long way to go before the first dodo clone is created. First of all, a separate method for bird species has to be developed. Bringing back mammoths, on the other hand, would be much easier, according to the researchers. What do you think about the presented cases? Does it make sense to clone extinct animal species back? And do you think that one day the mammoth and others will be a part of the animal kingdom again? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to leave us a like and a subscription so you never miss one of our videos again. And with that, thanks for watching, have a good one, and see you next time.